you have the opportunity to impact your client's life in all aspects.
The updated weight loss specialization will help trainers in many ways expand their career.
For the first time, we talk about the psychosocial aspects, the sociocultural.
You're going to be able to truly understand what your clients are going through when they have a specific weight loss journey.
All new information, new trends.
We were able to develop what we called personas.
To provide examples of what you might experience as a fitness professional when you encounter a client.
And build confidence as the months go by.
I'll feel more comfortable in my skin.
My self-confidence will improve.
Empathy is something that runs through the weight loss specialization.
It's about guiding people.
Regarding nutrition, regarding exercise.
I can go to bed at night knowing that I've done something good for the world.
It's great content and a blueprint for how to get results with your clients.
We put together a complete solution to help you, the professional, become the next weight loss specialist.
I'm Brad Dieter.
Ken Miller.
Casey DeYoung.
Wendy Batts.
Nolan Highland.
Mike Fanagrassi.
Welcome to NASM's Weight Loss Specialization course.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of We Speak. I will be your host today, Katrina Pilkington, AFA Master Instructor and Wellness Educator. And we talk about topics in this show all related to accessibility, equitability, and also inclusivity in the fitness space. So not just the programming aspects of fitness as an industry, but how we can, as professionals, make this a more welcoming space of belonging for the humans that we serve in this space. So today, we're going to be speaking about a topic related to checking our biases. We have all formulated opinions and thoughts and judgments, honestly, about what we've been through in fitness, how we got here as professionals. And we have to make sure we remember that many times when we don't check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, for lack of a better term, we can end up hindering our ability to not only impact our community, but to be the best fitness professionals we can. So as we dive into this topic today, I'm going to be introducing two guests that are going to be joining me today. I'm going to be speaking with Carlos first, and then Kia is going to be joining us in a few moments. She's also in Texas with lots of weather and storms, so bearing with her as she can hop on with us. Carlos Davila is an adjunct professor in Brooklyn, teaching students sports psychology and intro to psychology. He's a personal trainer and CrossFit coach, understanding the intersection of both the athlete and the coach for the humans that he serves in his space. He has delved into the topics surrounding acts of exclusion, also known as microaggressions, and intersectionality as they relate to our fitness industry and in fitness spaces. He speaks and writes about these issues in the effort to bring more awareness to folks as we understand how to really make health and wellness for those that need it the most. So welcome, Carlos.
Thank you, Kat.
Thanks for being here with me. Thanks for being here with me today. And then we're going to be introducing Kia Williams, who is a global master instructor, also a yoga instructor, master educator, host of Fit and Fierce on the Mic. She has managed several fitness businesses and wellness programs, and also does teaching herself and mentoring others in the collegiate space with fitness. So I hope that both of these humans are going to be here in this space to discuss these topics about bias as we dive into this place of professional development. So first, we're going to check in with Carlos. How's it going up there? And is it freezing in Brooklyn right now?
It's not. It's actually one of those weird, like, calm before the storm days. Like, it's actually been pretty nice. I think yesterday it was like 45 degrees in New York, because why not? I think we're going to get some snow tomorrow, but it's definitely the calm before the storm right now.
Yeah, that would be, so we just moved to Florida, and I don't really enjoy it all the time, but the one thing I do have to be thankful for is I'm terrified to ever drive or commute in the snow, so props to you for navigating that.
We're making it work.
So how did you get started in the fitness industry? Were you an athlete yourself? I found that was interesting as I was learning about your bio and how you help others find their inner athlete, I guess you could say. How did you get started in the fitness industry and the place you are right now as a trainer and educator?
So this is a very convoluted story that I'm going to try to truncate as much as possible. I started, like, I was always athletic, but never got into athletics early on as a kid. And then I want to say undergrad, I was trying to figure out a side hustle, essentially. And I was working out at a New York sports club and knew a lot of the staff and started to become friendly with a lot of the staff. And they knew that I was looking for a part-time job, literally in the middle of I can remember exactly what I was doing. I was doing tricep extensions with the rope on the pulley machine, and the manager at the time, Paul, came over and like, "Hey, you still looking for work in fitness?" We went into his office in between sets. I came back out and started working the next week.
Nice.
And at that time, there weren't the level of regulations that we currently, or expectations. Luckily, like, because I was also at the same time, getting ready to go to grad school and becoming more of an educator at the time, like learning was always a part of who I was as a human. And at the time, the owner of, or the manager of the gym that I was working at, he was also very big into education. So he would like print up articles and give them out to the staff and sort of quiz us on it. So that education part was always important to me. Then teaching classes and really started to find my niche being a fitness instructor. I've always been a huge fan of music. And that was one of the things very early on, that before I knew body-wise what I was doing with people, you came to my class because you knew that playlist was going to slap. And eventually, I started taking my craft a lot more seriously and started educating myself and taking all of these certs. And I got into the world of CrossFit and started coaching there and competing there. Did corporate fitness, did this very, very dope medical hybrid fitness space that I worked at for a couple of years. And then kind of found my way to boutique fitness, which is a very, very different space with a lot of the things that I think we're going to be talking about during this talk. I started to pay attention and notice these things a little bit more once I got into that particular space.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm actually somebody who I speak up about this on this show. I was never an athlete, never played a sport, never had my name on a jersey, never really knew how to throw a ball, none of the above, probably still don't. So I got into fitness really late into my 20s, probably early 30s. And I know I'm 25 still. So I looked at fitness in a different way when I joined the industry, I guess you could say. I actually was very intimidated, still am, in gym environments. And as I've delved into this world of, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and working more on helping folks understand the systemic issues that prevent individuals from feeling welcome, it all makes me go back to that time of when I didn't feel inclusive myself in the fitness space. Like it was just too intimidating. Did you ever feel that yourself when you first entered the space of fitness? Like it was kind of like, okay, I don't know about this space. How am I going to fit in here?
I think for me, it was because of where I kind of started my journey. And it's kind of a funny side note. I actually played semi-pro football for like 3 years.
Okay.
God knows how that happened. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how that happened because I never played organized football before then. And I kind of lucked out into it. But for me, fitness was always, at least initially for me, this very sort of fun, competitive kind of space. Like even before I started doing CrossFit, there was this class at Harlem that a friend of mine would teach. We taught like maybe 4 or 5 classes during the week. And this became a whole community. Like preseason sports conditioning became its own. We would party together. We would go to brunch after classes together. We would have like a basketball game, a football game, a softball game. It became a good 4 or 5 years of just fitness was the thing that brought us together. But like these are people that I still call family. Like I literally have group chats with like 5 different groups from that time. So for me, my experience was always very community focused when I came into fitness. It wasn't until I kind of left Harlem and started doing a little bit more corporate fitness and then eventually getting into boutique fitness that I started to see these other sort of parts of it and had moments where, okay, this is a little different. I feel a little different in this space. You know, even with something like CrossFit, I know CrossFit has gotten a lot of slack, especially last year with some of the things. And that community has always had issues with race and inclusivity. But I don't know, because I always went into that space with a competitive headspace and because that's what I was focusing on. I feel like I ignored a lot of the other stuff until they were so blatant that I couldn't. Like I've left CrossFit gyms and made it very clear why I was leaving those gyms. and I've been very vocal about the fitness industry in general, just not using their voice in a way that I feel they can and should. And, there's a lot of politics around it, and there's a certain level of anxiety around speaking out and being vocal, which is when you really kind of, pull it apart and think about it, it's kind of sad that a space that is supposed to be as welcoming and as engaging, and the goal of the space is to, for lack of a better term, just make you a better version of yourself.
Right.
That so many people don't feel seen, don't feel heard, don't feel appreciated, don't feel comfortable in those spaces.
Right. And I think what's going to happen in this episode is I want fitness professionals and those that are watching live, feel free to comment, ask questions as we dive into this topic. So just to piggyback off of what Carlos was just talking about, I think what happens is, somebody like me who was never an athlete, I kind of came into this wanting to understand the whys behind what my trainer at the time when I was getting started with my journey was saying. It was different for me, whereas other folks are going to have a different experience. But I think what can happen right now, as we are a captive audience, I like to say, is that fitness professionals are learning how to reach a bigger audience. And much of that is to sometimes unlearn what they've been taught. So as we dive into this topic of bias, what I want to preface this by saying is there are many different types of bias. So when I teach workshops all about implicit bias in the wellness industry, I do it very differently, and I do it from a place of grace to understand I am just like many of y'all. I have come into this from experiencing diet culture, from experiencing trends in the 90s and the 80s, and looking at this aesthetic that I was supposed to fit when I wanted to lose weight, not really understanding that socioeconomically and racially, I didn't have the same accessibility growing up. So biases are all about having stereotypes or thoughts or prejudices around a group of folks. So many of the biases that I see right now currently in the fitness industry relate to race and socioeconomic accessibility. So assuming a certain type of human should be able to access your pricing or your packaging or your product who can't. And secondly, also weight, beauty, and I guess you can say body aesthetic biases, like assuming a client coming in wants a specific goal versus really dissecting what they want as far as their personal goal. So what sort of biases have you seen, Carlos, specific maybe client situations where you're like, okay, well, that's more of an assumption versus something that a trainer could do to understand someone objectively?
I mean, you can put any of the isms in there, right? Like sexism, genderism, obviously, racism. And, it hasn't always been blatant, right? Like we talk about microaggressions and we talk about these subtle kind of moments of, wait, should I be offended by what you just said? I don't know, but by the time I figured it out, the moment has passed, so then I don't talk about it. But you see all of that, I remember, having conversations at some of my, some of the places that I work, talking about stuff like gendered language, right? This idea that girls' weight versus men's weight, right? You see that a lot in CrossFit communities. And you started to see that in boutique spaces where that language is being used as well. And then what do you do when, the identifying male can't lift the weight that you're calling girls' weight, or the identifying female is lifting much heavier than the men are supposed to be lifting, right? Like it creates these very funky dynamics. And then one of the things for me that's always an interesting part of this entire process is the intersectionality of it all, right? Because if I'm coming into a space and I feel unseen or unheard, or I feel this weird energy, is that because I'm a minority? Is that because of, if I'm talking about myself specifically, is it because of the way I speak? Is it because of my hair? Is it because of my beard? Like there are so many things that I may not know, but a lot of the research that I've done has been with women of color, right? So if I'm a woman of color going into a space, is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm a minority? Is it because I'm not the shape that you expect to be in this very specific kind of space? So you see all those isms. I mean, I went through a phase, I went through a time in my experiences in boutique fitness spaces where I was mistaken for another instructor for weeks.
Right.
I was congratulated for this. He was on a TV show. And again, we could be distant cousins, but he doesn't have locks. Like that should have been that should have been the fact, that should have been it right there. because I literally, after a while, and it became kind of this running joke, and it didn't become funny, or it didn't stop being funny until I realized, like, this really isn't funny.
Right.
Like, there's nothing funny about, because I had that moment where I was like, wait, you don't see me. Like, you see, literally, because the things that we shared were, you see some of the facial features, you see the beard, you don't see my height, you don't see my hair, you don't see how I talk, you don't see my personality, because those things were significantly different in that space. And it was very eye-opening. And I had been doing research on microaggression stuff, but I think that made it a lot more concrete for me. Right. And the interesting part of that was that if it happened 8 times, I got 2 apologies, right? Right. It wasn't always, oh my God, I'm sorry, That wasn't it would be kind of laughing it off, awkward silence, and then I have to move on with my life, you have to move on with your life. Right. But I still have to leave that space feeling like I'm not seen at all, right? If I'm not seen, then I can't be appreciated. I can't be, there are so many things, like when you start there and you kind of trickle down from it, that are just very icky kind of things that you have to deal with as an instructor. That's the key point, is like feeling like you belong. Because I've been in, and I won't name the brand, I've been in many different fitness spaces. When I moved from Florida to Las Vegas, it was a very eye-opening experience in the boutique gym industry. And I went to one of those classes that was a circuit class taught with a treadmill and the floor. And I was told, ladies, grab these weights, gentlemen, grab these weights. And I was in the air going, well, what about what I want to do for me? So such a great point as far as it's all about assumptions for me. And I'm sure that Kia can lend a lot more to this conversation too. So I want to see if we can bring in our third. Hey.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Surviving the random Houston storm of 2021.
Oh, Texas is getting hit hard. It's so great to be here with you all. Thank you for having me.
So great to have Kia back. So Carlos and I were just diving into kind of what biases we've seen related to weight, beauty, assumptory situations, socioeconomic, racially, in the fitness industry. I know you have a lot of background yourself as a group fitness instructor and a trainer as well, an educator. So what are maybe some experiences you've had with bias and just assumptory thinking in fitness?
Sure. So you and I, we've had this conversation. We've done a lot of this work. And through my research and observations, clients have told me some very heart-wrenching and heartbreaking stories about how they've been prejudged before. And I was listening to, as Carlos said, before their voices were heard, before they were truly seen as a person, as a human being. But it goes as far as pulling into the parking lot and feeling like you don't belong at this beautiful studio or facility because you see people going in who don't look like you, who don't drive cars the same year or make or model as yours. And then you have the courage to enter that studio or facility, and then the initial questions asked of you are very derogatory in the way of, well, and this is, and I quote a client telling me this, well, aren't you tired of being fat?
Yeah.
Okay. When is that ever appropriate?
Why would I put my money towards that? Why?
How do you assume that you're truly going to, I get, punchy language and catchy language sometimes work, but offending someone is how you get their business. But if we're talking on a personal note, something that happened very recently, I was training a new client via Zoom online and demonstrating a push-up. And this man said to me, well, why don't you do girl push-ups?
See? Yeah.
Pardon me, sir?
Because I know Kia.
Say what now? Say what now?
I know.
Say what now?
Come again now? So it's an instance like that where I'm like, okay, Kia, do you educate this man or do you let him go? Like what? I don't need your money that bad.
Do the best you can until you know better. And once you know better.
something else, an experience that just came to mind as I was listening to Carlos is as a master trainer for various modalities and various styles of movement. I was at a conference, a seminar, and another master trainer who I didn't know that well said to me she had been following me online and noticed that I lost a lot of weight. And I corrected her. I said, no, I have not lost a lot of weight. Actually, maybe it's a 5-pound difference, and that could be water weight. She's like, no, your body looks a lot different from last year. I said, oh, I was training for a powerlifting competition last year. So maybe that's why my body looks a little different, but I don't weigh that much of a difference. And she says, well, see, that's why women shouldn't lift heavy, because you get big.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, why does it matter? Right?
Are we still having that conversation about women lifting weights? And why does
Sadly,
my body?
Sadly, yes.
I think to your point, like those conversations where it starts off by you look like you've gained weight, you look like you've lost weight. Why does it always have to be weight based?
Exactly.
It's health and fitness. It's not just weight based, first of all. Second of all, lifting weights is good for your muscle tone and health as a general topic.
And because I want to, how about that?
Right. I can't.
Let's start there. Let's start there.
How about the Brown said that? Because it's my business. That's why.
And it costs you 0.00 to mind yours. How about that?
Right.
But if I could interject, Kat, something that popped into my head that when Kia was talking about like you coming into that parking lot, think about the clothes that are being advertised, right? Think about the sizes that are being, promoted when you come into that fitness space. Think about the pictures that you see. Absolutely. Who's promoting this space? I think we don't really realize a lot of times that the aesthetics of a space are going to have a significant impact on people of color or people that are marginalized coming into a space already anxious, already hesitant, already with their own insecurities and that big bag of negative thoughts that they've had to overcome to even make it into that parking lot. Right. And then you get slapped in the face with, oh, aren't you tired of being like, who does that? Y'all?
Right. And to the point of that, I have talked about this on the show before too, but there's such a difference in marketing towards inclusive populations and diverse populations versus asking for feedback from your population to say, how can I do better as a business owner and as a fitness professional and actually integrate more bias checking into my life? So I think folks don't want to take this as, let me just be representative and tokenize those that are in these populations. Let me actually do the work so that I can actually have a better empathetic understanding of these populations, so I can come from a place of genuine want to help, not I need to help because it's the trend, right?
Right.
So what do you feel can happen if a fitness professional assumes I don't have biases, I don't need to check myself, the way I'm doing business is just fine? What can negatively happen as a result of not checking one's bias? And maybe a tip that y'all want to offer as far as how can somebody even get started working on this?
Well, I think it's detrimental to your career and to your business to not check your biases, to not look into your own practices and beliefs and assumptions. The world is very grand, and every individual that you come into contact with carry just different complexities and different differences, period, that makes them so incredibly interesting and valuable to this world. So why would you not? And I fell in love with the fitness industry because it's supposed to be inclusive. It's supposed to be for everyone. It's supposed to be affordable enough that we are combating ailments and illnesses and preventative measure. So why be a part of the naysayers who make fitness a part of classism, that makes fitness part of an elitism where it's not accessible to all, and that representation does not matter? That goes against all that the work that our predecessors have put into making fitness functional and accessible for everyone. And the second part of your question is, why not look into it? Because it's the right thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do. You are a service provider.
Yeah.
You aren't necessarily a performer. You
Right.
know,
I know.
you are not Prince. You are not Beyonce, who I'm going to pay for. I'm paying $400 for a ticket.
I mean, I don't know who you've been watching.
I mean, baby,
you need to go on the gram. Everybody's Beyonce right now. All the influencers are Beyonce right now.
In my mind, I am Sasha Fierce. I will turn on Sasha Fierce, but humble yourself for you truly are a service provider. You are serving other people's needs to make them well, to make them healthier. So it's truly the ethical thing to do. It's the right thing to do. To look into yourself. It doesn't make you a bad person to check in with your star player and to continue to progress and get better. That just broadens your reach. That makes you even more approachable for more people to engage with you, who want to engage with you, who want to refer you to other people, who want to say that Carlos is the social media influencer of fitness. This is the person you are supposed to trust because he's credible, he's authentic, and he's accessible no matter where he is or wherever Kia is. You know, it's the right thing to do, Katrina. Simple as that.
I agree with you. And I think that's the whole point, is thinking about the why of why you got into this industry, because you wanted to help people get healthy and well. But it's really easy. I've been in this business a long time, like yourself, to get caught up in the cliches and the niches that everybody else is doing. And to Carlos's point, a lot of the influencing that's going on online and getting sucked into, oh, I should be doing that instead. No, you should stay true to yourself, and you should really hone in on your humility so that you're building relationships, because you are a service provider who is a coach and a mentor. You're not just a trainer or just an instructor who's Beyonce, right, Carlos?
I mean, look, if that's you, great, but it's not. And I think people don't understand that that's not you. But to answer your question, for me, when we don't check these biases or even take the time to address the fact that there are biases, which, let's be clear, if last year doesn't happen, pandemic doesn't happen, the significant increase in seeing and understanding what's happening with Black lives, that's the reason why there's so much diversity and inclusion around fitness now. Let's be clear. There's been a problem for a long time.
Right.
Long time, right? The problem is that if we're not taking the time to be uncomfortable with the fact that every human has a bias. Every human. You're not human if you don't have a bias. That's how we work. Look it up, Google it, ask Siri. That's how we work. It's when we don't check those biases and understand that just because we've been socialized to believe something or perceive something, that makes it okay. Just because your auntie or your grandma told you that this way of thinking was okay doesn't make it okay. So now we create this space where we're normalizing all of the isms, right? That's why when you hear stories of like old school coaches who would use gendered speak, right? Would use very homophobic speech when talking to their athletes. That's because that way of engaging with your athletes and coaching became normalized. I remember teaching one of my graduate level sports psychology classes, and there was a baseball coach in that class. And he just started saying some really like gendered, inappropriate stuff. And there was a moment where I was like, I'm going to stop this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let the rest of the class address this, right? And it kind of turned into this heated back and forth discussion between a couple of the female coaches that were also taking the class and this person. And at the end of it, I got emails from all of the female coaches, and they were like, we appreciate the fact that you allowed that conversation to happen. Because whether he takes something away from that, that's going to change it or not, like we have to be a little bit more comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. Like none of this is fun to talk about. Like none of us got on this call today and we were like, I want to talk about all these great, you know, racism and sexism and genderism that I've experienced in fitness. Like we don't want to think about these things. But at the end of the day, if we are not taking the time, because we have a voice and because we're able to express these things that hundreds of thousands of people have dealt with in fitness spaces. And I need that number to be clear. There are hundreds of thousands of people that have gone into fitness spaces and have felt the way that we're saying a lot of people feel in these spaces. We have to have these conversations. We have to normalize these uncomfortable conversations. And we have to stop these self-fulfilling prophecies, because your assumption is that people of color don't want to be in these spaces, or they can't afford it, or they're doing it for weird reasons or whatever. And you do things subtly to push them away. Now they're not coming to your space, or they feel weird when they're in your space and don't come back. And now you feel validated, and now, oh, well, they don't belong here anyway.
Right.
Not realizing that, no, you're the reason why they're not coming into the space and they don't feel comfortable in the space and they're not coming back.
Right.
Don't create a situation that is off-putting to people. Then when people are off-put, you're like, see, I told you they were going to be off-put. That's not how logic works at all.
No. Having that grace to understand that you actually could be the issue of your own business, that you could be in your own way. And we tell this to our clients and our students, right? You got to get comfortable with the discomfort. So why don't we just do that continuously and do this work? I think that's why this show is important to me, and for folks to really take this time, even if it's not live, to listen and learn. Some of the recommendations I have are reading the book Blind Spots, Hidden Biases of Good People. It's the #1 book I recommend. And also Biased by Dr. Jen Eberhardt, all about understanding the science of bias and finding a workshop perhaps that could help you kind of dissect, or even messaging us, which I'll ask in a second how to reach y'all on social, and having those conversations. Many of us don't mind having them, but having the honest conversation to look introspectively versus externally and accusatory. So how can folks find you two on social media before we close out for the quick time we had?
Take it away, Carlos.
I am at Babalos on Instagram, BABALOS.
Awesome.
And I am at KiaWilliams.fitness on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify. That's how you get in touch with me.
All the ones that we will use, because Kia knows I won't use all of them. But I just want to say thank you so much to these two humans who are here to have this open dialogue and conversation with me, and taking that time to contribute your energy to this space. And I also hope that everyone has a chance to watch, play back, listen, ask us questions. We will address them in the comments and Facebook. And I look forward to having a continued conversation here on We Speak next week, as we dive into more topics about equitable spaces in fitness with diversifying our narrative. Have a great day, everyone.